right. I think we're doing it. I think we're streaming once again. Hello, I'm Claire Moon, and welcome to another office hour. This is going to be a Q&A, basically, an astrology Q&A. I personally am more of modern ancient synthesis for sure. But I definitely lean more ancient. So I don't know a lot of like more modern-y stuff. So if you have questions about that, I'm usually going to need to crowdsource. But that's also the cool part is that if you look over to the right-hand side of your screen, you're going to see a live chat. It's over there. And this is where I like to go if I don't know the answer to something. I very lovely change of events. Usually I'm like scrounging for questions for these office hours beforehand. I like to have some coming in, but today I got a ton. So we've got like a packed hour. Let me give you the cliff notes here. So we're going to talk about dreams and the moon, dream moon stuff. We're going to talk about the notorious out of sign but degree based, or degree based but not in sign type of aspects and how we handle those. If we get a chance, we will discuss the Venus and Leo transit coming up. There was a really good question from Carol Sue about comparing it to the one from 2015. I would like to do that. No promises though, but that is a really good one. So we're going to try to get there. Then we also have how to interpret the chart ruler in detriment. So we're going to talk about that. What else? Oh, we had a really good question about just how to kind of work with the more challenging transits of June. So I had a couple notes there, but those were the things. And I feel like if we do that, time's going to be gone. If you have other questions though, and if we don't get to it, I'm going to overflow it onto next month's. And honestly, like if this keeps happening, I might have to do like 2 of these a month. I might have to start, because when I did start, I was doing them like every week and it was wild and like it was just not necessary. But now it might be necessary to do 2 a month. So we'll see if they keep being kind of popular. Because yeah, I don't know. It's a happy change of events here. Thank you so much, everyone who is joining me. Hello, Nanda Devi. Hello, Lee. Hello, Reverend. Good to see everybody. I've got some regulars. We got some regulars coming. We got Tracy. We got Kay. Thanks, everybody. If any of you lovely folks in the chat have any questions, throw them in there. I will do my best to get to them. Yeah, doing lives forever. I used to do these on Instagram, but I was doing them off of my phone and it was like, it was not good. And then I made the mistake of doing it on an eclipse once. And I was like, no, we're never doing this again. Technological difficulties. So let's jump into things. Let me share my screen. Okay, here we are. It is Sag rising. I actually waited. I was like, let's start early. Why am I not just starting early and chatting with people before 7? Like I could do that. And then I pull, and I almost did. And then I pulled up the chart and I had the choice between starting this at Scorpio rising or Sagittarius rising. So I picked Sagittarius. So I think, let's see, do we have any cool examples of something here? I'm going to cover, the first question I'm going to cover is the one about out of sign, or like, when the aspect is one way by degree, like let's say it's a degree based square, but a sign based trine. Or let's say that it is, by degree a trine, but by sign a square. What do we do in that instance? How do we interpret that? And this question comes from Dux Noctis. Yeah, another OG, another friend for a long time. They were asking about that, I believe, and then they had another question about orbs. So first things first, the answer is both and. We're going to take both and. So let's just pretend. I'm actually just going to get rid of the planets for a second. Does that work? Yeah. Okay, let's pretend like we have Jupiter in Gemini, and let's say they're at 5 degrees. Ooh, let's say they're at like 5 degrees or something of Gemini. And then we have, let's just say Saturn. Oh, this is actually going to be a thing within like a year eventually. Let's say we have Saturn at, I don't know. Yeah, and let's draw them over at the end of Pisces at like, let's say 28. So these are definitely in a sign-based square. So when we think about aspects, we think about traditional aspects, this is where it comes in really handy, knowing aspect doctrine from the Thema Mundi, and knowing that the reason that signs have an aspect, the reasons why planets in those signs can communicate better and can work with each other better is because they have things in common. They have qualities of the signs in common, like gender, triplicity, quadruplicity, or like the elements, the modalities. So there's things in common between these two planets, but it is a square. And so, there are things that they don't have in common either, like that one is, Pisces nocturnal, Gemini diurnal. One is water, one is air, but they're both mutable. So there is a relationship. It's kind of a strained relationship, but that's what we have going on here first. So we have that sign-based kind of relationship that we analyze first. But then we can see that, they are in what is more of a, I guess maybe this would have been a better example if I would have thought about the speeds differently, but we'll just ignore that for now. But these are more in like a degree-based sextile. They're closer to being in a sextile by degree than they are by a square. So then is it a sextile because they're doing that by degree, or is it a square because they're doing that by sign? And again, the answer is both. So here we see that, okay, yes, it is somewhat of a square relationship, but maybe there's something soft about it. Maybe there's a softening there. And the opposite could be true as well. Let's say they were in a sign-based sextile, which is more harmonious, but they're about to come out of that into a square. And so by degree, they're pretty much in a square. That sextile now is going to be harsher. That sextile might be coming into more of a harsh thing. So I'm bringing a couple things together there, but that's how I personally handle that. So that's what I have to say about that question. So thank you for that. And then the other part of it, and then the 3-degree engagement range and how to work with that, and my opinion on orbs. My opinion on orbs is that everyone has their own opinion on orbs. Like it's so different. The main thing for me is that I like the ancient astrologers' designation of engagement of this 3-degree range, especially applying, but also separating where a planet coming into contact with another planet, that's going to be a really strong or louder signature at that point, up until it becomes partile, up until it perfects and then starts to wane. With the moon, that's going to be, they have their own special orb of 13 degrees because that's how far they travel in a day. They're so fast. So it makes sense that the moon would have a wider reach. Essentially, they have a wider reach because they just travel more than anybody else in the sky. So that is that. And I use those 13-degree orbs as well for the moon. It's like some people cut it off at 10. I mean, for me, like, and this is where I really love the visuals of what the hell is called Archetypal Explorer. For anyone who's seen Archetypal Explorer, sometimes Chris Brennan will pull it up on his astrology podcast. I used to pull it up back in the day when I had a subscription. I don't have the subscription anymore, but back when I did, I would pull that up during my forecasts as well. And it's really cool because it shows this kind of increase over time, and then a decrease. So it shows kind of the energy or whatever it is, the configuration itself growing into perfection. And then thus, analogously, that's how it should show up down here, right? So I like that as a visual, and it helps to kind of understand that with orbs, I mean, it's more of a gradient for me. The closer it gets, the stronger it gets. The further away, the less stronger it is. Pretty much simple as that for me. I don't, so that I'm being slippery. I'm not giving an answer. Like when I was in my AstroGold software and it was asking me like how I wanted to define my orbs, I have it set to just like a bunch of shit. It's like so messy. So like if you're getting a reading from me, I probably should actually like do something about that, because like it changes what the lines look like in the middle. And for me, like I just don't care. Like I'm not looking at the lines in the middle, but a lot of other people are. Because you can set, so now my planets are gone. Let me show you what I mean. Um, all softwares, well, I shouldn't say all. A lot of softwares have the ability to change like the orbs and change all the settings behind it. So I can make these lines look any darn way I want. So I think the message there is, don't get too bent out of shape if you're looking at aspect lines on a software and they look a certain way. Like I can change them. But yeah, I think that's what I have to say about that. Let's see. Oops. So thank you, Dux Noctis, for that. Cecilia asks about how to interpret a chart ruler in detriment or fall in a natal chart. And my first inclination was with temperance and care. That's how. I mean, because it's a tough thing. So anytime we're talking about potentially difficult things, and it's not difficult for everybody, we always have to remember that the chart is, 10 plus planets and points, 12 signs, so many things, so many darn little things that to look at one thing, even something as important as a chart ruler or a sun, just to remember the larger context, the larger point of view, that it is one of many, many parts of you. So when you're getting to learn astrology and you're getting to learn enough to kind of be dangerous, so to speak, where you can start to see like, oh, that thing is allegedly favorable and that other thing is allegedly not. I wasn't too happy when I realized my moon was besieged. I was like, what shit is this? I would like to speak with the manager. But yeah, so just taking care in speaking with that person, because it can be a hard thing. But how I like to frame this, and I think framing is really important, because when we start to hear words that are really loaded, and language really matters. Like some people are kind of cynical and they're like, who cares what people say? Don't put so much stock into what people say or whatever. But our brains do, though. Like our brains learn the meanings of words, and we just make inferences from that, because that's what our brains do. So words like detriment and fall, that doesn't sound very good. So the first thing I always do, especially if someone like, I'm just going to do shop talk and tell people how I address this in a consult. The first thing I do is, if that person knows those words already and they're not necessarily advanced enough in their studies to realize all of the nuance and the mitigations around that placement for themselves, and they're still kind of freaked out about it, or haven't kind of, at least come to peace, if it's really crummy, come to peace with it. If they're in that stage of nervousness, really making sure they realize that a planet in fall or detriment is not a moral or a merit-based judgment. So it doesn't mean it's like, say, Mercury in Pisces is like a bad Mercury, or sometimes it's not even that, it's like a quote unquote ineffective Mercury. But what that planet is experiencing, Mercury is A-okay. Mercury is Mercury. They like details. They represent the hands. They're good old Mercury. But the planet describes, basically the part of us, I feel like. The sign is like the place. It's like well, that's a bad word to use because I call houses places. The sign is like the environment that planet is in. And so a planet in detriment, so let's say it's the chart ruler, and the chart ruler, so let's use this hypothetical Sagittarius person. The chart ruler here is Jupe, good old Jupiter. Let's say Jupiter was over here in Gemini, in the birth chart. So Gemini represents this person. So what is it to be a person? It's like, this is me. What, I am in detriment. I am in fall. Yeah. And that means the resources around you, the environment around you, is not necessarily a good fit. It's not necessarily like you are not resourced always in a way that you would choose or prefer. It could be poor resourcing, just a lack of resources. It could be so many things, but most of them revolve around this idea that that planet is not getting the help that it would prefer, or maybe even that it needs. So for instance, what is it to be in Gemini? Gemini is an environment of 10,000 little things and ideas and bibs and bobs and ideas, and just like so much. None of it's necessarily connected. It's just a random assortment. Jupiter would like to have a coalesced, meaningful thing happening. Like, okay, of all of these 10,000 parts, what is the meaning of all of this? How does it all work together, fit together? That's a pretty tall order. And Jupiter here, they might like to have, I don't know, a map. Maybe Gemini is all the little calculations of like, feet from this point to this point, all like little geometric calculations. But Jupiter is the ability to draw it out onto a map, not just the topographical data, but then representation of that. Jupiter wants to do that in Gemini, but it's not given the map making tools that it would prefer. It's given just a bunch of raw data. And it's given, I don't know, finger paints or something gravy to paint with, to make a map with. It's given like trash. So what does Jupiter what do they have to do? They have to be really resourceful. They have to figure out some other way using what they've been given. And, we like to talk about, I think, especially now, like that a lot of these ancient concepts have come forth, and a lot of them sound kind of gnarly. A lot of people's reaction to that has been to try to soften it, and I can totally understand that. And I soften a lot of things myself. I don't think there's anything wrong with softening things to a point. But this is where I think we kind of look at the end result of a planet in detriment and say, oh, well, you know what? They ended up with all these, and I do this too. Like you'll hear this in my consults. I'm like, oh, they have cool skills, and eventually they have all these cool experiences, and like they would have never had those skills or experiences otherwise. And it's like, wow, so unique, so interesting. And we come to appreciate it, but the experience of that planet in detriment is not necessarily one that is fun. It's usually somewhat frustrating. It can be a sense of not belonging. It can be a sense of feeling unappreciated. It can be a sense of being straight up hindered or impeded. So it can be a lot of difficulty. And usually as you're talking with someone, they will validate that and be like, oh yeah, actually, whatever. But interestingly enough, like I've talked to like people who have Mercury retrograde in Pisces. One would think, oh, communication, that must be a problem for them. But they were like a polyglot, knew a bunch of languages, very great at communicating. That clearly wasn't the problem. So it's not as simple a lot of the time. Like I've met so many Mercury and Pisces people who are scientists and work with a lot of raw data, something you wouldn't necessarily think of with Mercury and Pisces, but you do see that. So it's not always as simple. So I think it is important to talk to whoever, you can't if you're looking at a celebrity chart, but talk to the people that you're talking to about their own experience, because they will usually just say it to you. But yeah, that's how I deal with that. So that's an excellent question. Because a lot of, we don't want to say things that make people feel bad, but we also don't want to invalidate if things are challenging. And it's always kind of a delicate dance to figure out what side to go on with that or not. We got the chai. It's not the chiter. I actually stopped doing the chiter. I was like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing to my metabolic system with like just drinking cider constantly. Okay. Let's check in on the chat. Let's see. I've just been blabbing and blabbing. We're off to the races. Stars and gamers. Yes, it was Horsey Rising. It was absolutely Horsey's Rising. Hello, Fallen. Hello, Kay. Hello, Jendi. Hello, Catman. Welcome back. Hello, Jade. Welcome back. I also love Archetypal Explorer. Yeah, when I was in my austerity measures last fall, it was one of the things that bit the dust. So it didn't make it. Reverend Kai asks, do you use planetary or aspect-based orbs? I feel super ignorant about both. I feel like that's a basic thing that I should know, but I missed class that day. I know in the medieval Renaissance tradition, different planets have different orbs. I learned that in a book on my shelf. That was from On the Heavenly Spheres. That's where I learned that. Yeah, the Moiades. And then like, okay, so different planets got these different orbs. And I don't remember what the rhyme and reason was behind those, by the way. I think there is. I think there's a reason for it. But there's like an overlapping of orbs, you know, if like a planet is kind of moving. I don't know. I don't use those. I'm very much more fluid and just like, are they in the sign? Are they in a sign-based relationship? How strong or weak is it depending on how close they are? And then degree wise, I personally am just watching it get closer and closer and seeing things strengthen and strengthen. And then once it hits that 3-degree mark, that is when I'm starting to warn or tell people about what they might be sensing or feeling. I feel like by that 3-degree mark, that's where it's probably being reflected down here pretty vividly. So yeah, I don't think I use either, honestly. I think I'm gonna have to like research that. Thank you. What else did I miss? Kay asks, has anyone noticed weird Mercury stuff happening these past days after the Uranus conjunction? I kind of have been having some breakthroughs with things like usually during Mercury retrograde, I have breakthroughs and like insights when it comes to like my workflows and my technology and like doing things better. And that has been happening again the last few days. And I was kind of wondering the same thing. And here's that conversation about orbs. Wow. This is so perfect. This is so perfect because I was just wondering about this. We've got Mercury and Uranus and they're 6 degrees apart right now. So like you would think, you know, okay, well, they're beyond that 3-degree thing, but I mean, I don't know. I'm still having insights. I'm still having little sudden things and little blips. So yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. You know, I like to think too about like a boat on a lake. And after that boat speeds by, its wake goes for quite a long time. And, you know, even if it's not a super strong wave left in the wake, it's still one that I can very visibly see with my eyes. It's not going to knock me over, but like, you know, it's still definitely there. So yeah, I guess these are things for all of us to observe and I guess just see what we think. I mean, it must be somewhere around like 15 to 10. I feel like all the astrologers kind of start to get excited after 10 degrees. It's like 7, you know, 8, like 3. So actually lots of car issues. This is so, oh my God. My check engine light has been going on and off all week. So I actually made an appointment for tomorrow and my check engine light went off for the second time and I'm just going to bring it in. So some electrical thing is happening. I don't know. So yes, Kay, I am with you. I don't know if anyone else has been having things. Maybe this is a good segue to the question about transits for this month. Because that Mercury Neptune square is coming and I kind of want to talk about that. It's so interesting. What else is going on here? I mean, we've got the moon who's been applying to that. So that's a thing. That's pinging stuff. Yeah. Oh, you know what else too? And this is a sextile, but it isn't a sextile with Neptune. So not sure. So I guess maybe moon pinging it today, but yeah, I don't know. I wonder if this sextile is doing that. Neptune, you know, I'm just not a huge fan. I think that they are possibly such a shyster that they can do their shysting even from a sextile. I don't know. But yeah, we'll see. Hopefully it gets better. I was dealing with a lot of internet issues the week before last, so I'm ready to be done with it. Let's see. Thanks, Eve. I appreciate that. Hello, Andrew. Welcome. Welcome, Taylor. Taylor's car broke down. Oh no, and was smoking. Oh my God. Oh no. Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about speaking of smoking, suddenly smoking things, we're also having a Mars Uranus square at the end of the month. So Stan asked a really good question about just how to transmute any challenging energies from the month ahead. We've kind of gotten through the first of the three that were on my mind, which was this fixed square business. We had Mars, Jupiter, and Pluto at the beginning of June, which was like my Randy Savage on the volcano, like kind of reference of just intense energy. And I saw that come up a lot as people having just a lot of stuff to get done or do or power through, and they had the energy to power through intense interpersonal situations that were not very fun. I saw a few of those. But overall, it was just kind of intense. So, I mean, I personally just was watching myself. I noticed in myself, I was a little bit more irritable, just a little bit more on edge. And I am a fixed sign person. I have that on the angle. So it was affecting me really directly. If you're more of a mutable or cardinal person, it may not be hitting you that much, but it's starting to wane now. I mean, every time the moon hits a fixed sign, it's been pinging this fixed T-square business. And now as the month moves on, what we're going to have, and this is more, it's kind of starts to get going on the 22nd of the month, 22nd of June. And at this point, we get a Mars Uranus square that's applying. Now it's within 3 degrees here by the 22nd. Mercury's moving really fast. So even though it's like 6 degrees away from Neptune on the 22nd, it's going to be really close really soon. So by June 22nd, this is where, and I don't know, transmute is one thing, transmute feels more like, I don't know, I'm doing like some heavy psychological lifting, which, I'm going to go back and talk about the Mercury Pluto thing on the 10th. That's more transmute territory. This, I'm just thinking, how can we like put these energies into something? Yeah, this is transmuting. We're putting the energies into something else, very sympathetic magic. If there's like some influence or, just some reflection happening, how can I try to reflect that in a way that is more constructive? And so, a really cool thing with Neptune square Mercury is if you're into art, music, design, if you have a creative element of the work that you do or just your life's practice, great time to be doing anything about that, especially things that require adjustment. Let's say you're a painter and you've decided that you're going to switch the type of paint that you're using and you need to throw out or just phase out the old stuff and into the new. It's kind of annoying and uncomfortable. I don't know, just making changes can be kind of uncomfortable. But, it could also be the discomfort of me learning a new chord on my guitar and trying to make my fingers work, even though they don't want to. So, yeah, that could be really benign instances. When we're thinking more like material world, this is bad for forms and contract signing, truth, honesty, where you need it. There can be deception sometimes. So let's watch the clock here as we go by day. So by the 24th, and then by the 25th is when it's going to go, 24th, 25th, it'll be going partile. And at this point, 22nd to the 26th, if you've got things to sign, if you can just push it off, push it off until Monday. I mean, the nice thing too is part of this is on the weekend. So, to make sure if you're having fun, if you're having a good time, that you're making a note about where you parked your car so you can find it the next day. Stuff like that, where this can be fun, but it could just require a little bit of over communication. I usually employ the Mercury retrograde protocols whenever Mercury is in a hard aspect to Neptune. So, over communicate, move slow, try not to multitask as much, pay attention to what you're doing, have awareness. And then once we get to the 27th, that starts to really, as soon as we get to the 20, is it that fast? Yeah, the 26th is already in Cancer. I was going to say it's going to break up, but not only is it going to break up from the square, it's going to go into a whole new sign. Here's an example of that. So they are now in a trine by sign, but it's still kind of squarey by degree. So there's something crunchy, and we know something crunchy just happened. Like square stuff, we know something was afoot, something uncomfortable maybe happened. But then once Mercury goes into a water sign, now they have more in common and they're able to communicate better in some kind of way that's maybe more productive. It's going to be maybe more productive in waterways, like emotionally or creatively. But yeah, that really works. And it's not without a little bit of tension, because by degree, it's still a square, but working more smoothly. So that's how I work with that kind of very both and. Then the Mars Uranus square, that was the other thing. So now we can see Mercury Neptune square has broken up, but at the same time, this is just also just about done the day before. So they're like, those two squares are overlapping a little bit, but they're not at the exact same time. The Mars Uranus thing goes perfect a little later. But it does. And this is just unstable. So how I would work with this energy, I mean, benign example could be, I love to use the, someone doesn't come into work, someone calls in sick, you have to step in for their work and, help keep the ball moving down the court. So you kind of have to jump in or something suddenly, or act suddenly, or do something unexpected. That would be a less icky example. On the less fun spectrum of things, it's just like very sudden, abrasive change, having to adjust something really suddenly, very abrasively, very abruptly, and it's not comfortable, and it could be very unstable. It could be somewhat destructive. Destructive is a strong word, but it could be. So, be careful. Don't text when you're driving on these days, like basically the last 10 days of June. Everyone be careful driving around. I'm not usually like fear mongery like that, but I don't love the combination of those two squares. Sorry, my voice is getting a little froggy. I've noticed by the end of the week, I kind of start to lose it a little bit. But it's fine because I'm just constantly drinking fluids. Pisces moon, I'm made of soup. Okay. So that's that question. That's how I would transmute that. Move slow. The antidote for a lot of Mars Mercury things a lot of the time is just slowing down and paying attention. So that's my advice for that. Yeah. Last 10 days of June they get a little bit interesting. So then let's talk about dreams. But before we do, we'll talk about our dreams. Let's look at the chat. Can anyone answer? Jade Roscoe has a good question that I don't know the answer for. Outer planets get wider orbs. I use smaller orbs for slower things, actually. I go the other way. Yeah, I use smaller orbs for slower, farther away things. Let's see. Oh, Stars and Gamers is also a Horseshoe Rising, just like right now. Yeah, like Weight of Destiny feels Stars and Gamers is saying they've been feeling the wild weight of destiny and existential dread. And I feel like squares, like these squares and oppositions, these like fixed squares, and then you get the moon in Scorpio, and then it's like a grand cross. And I guess you could count the nodes too. Those are like in a grand cross thing with the transits that are happening in the fixed signs. But man, those hard aspects, when they start to pile up, and they all speak to change, problem solving, adjustment, like, and those are all things that are natural parts of life. But when those things add up, like life starts to shift a lot, and it's like, what is happening? Like, and this is why astrology is very interesting. It can help to validate things like that. Kind of interesting. Let's see. Dogs, cats. Oh gosh. Oh, Tracy, you might need a horary astrologer. They're saying their dog and cats must be driven to New York, no cargo due to heat on the plane, learning every day. Is there a way to see if the pets will be okay? the planets or houses I would look at. Yeah, so that would be a great question for a horary astrologer. Some that come to mind are, oh, what is his name? Rob Bailey. To all, I don't know what his last name is, but I'm gonna link all these people below after I'm done here. I just got a horary question myself. I just bought my first horary question, and I'm not going to tell you what I asked, but it was awesome and it was great. Yeah, I can't recommend it enough. This is a question, and then you would ask, like, will my pets survive? Will my pets survive this trip? But yeah, you would, I mean, just a few things about pets in general is like small animals and pets are usually the sixth house. Let me see. I'm going to look up Triplicity Lords of the Sixth because I feel like this gets more specific. So the Triplicity Lords of the Sixth house, the animals are in the third. They're the third lord. So that would be another planet you could look at. I'm going to link a really good article from Tony Lewis about this so that you can do it. But that would just be at least like if you're looking at transits, you know, like if you're doing stuff with your pets, or I guess if this was me, if I was trying to like elect a certain time to be doing things with pets and I wanted it to turn out well, like I would want fortunates, I would want benefics in the sixth house. I would want Jupiter or Venus there. I wouldn't want Mars or Saturn in the sixth necessarily. I would want the Lord of the sixth, the Triplicity Lord of the third Triplicity Lord of the sixth to be well placed and well conditioned and in application to good things, not bad things. Yeah, those would be some of the things that would be relevant to that, but very sixth housey for sure. And then too, you know, in that analysis, like looking at what is activated for the year, because if neither of those planets are activated as Lord of the year, then whatever does happen might not be as meaningful or important, or as loud. So looking at some other timing stuff too could be helpful there. So hopefully that helps and wasn't too technical. But yeah, I'll put that down. I got to make a note here. What have I all said so far? The Triplicity Lords thing. I'll just have to listen back. That's fine. I'll figure out what I all said. Oh, they get picked up on the 19th or 20th. Yeah, I better not say anything unless I'm seeing all of the charts. But yeah, those would be the things I would look at. All right. Nanda Devi uses 3 to 5 degrees for outer planets. I tend to use, about the same, about 3 to 5. I think I'm about the same. For like fixed stars, I use like 1 to 2 degrees. For the lunar nodes, I use 3 degrees. I don't know why, honestly. I could be wider, I suppose, but I digress. Let's talk about nodes, because someone had asked, or wait, no, we're going to talk about dreams. Then we're going to talk about moon stuff, phases, and nodes. We got 20 minutes left. So if anybody has any questions too, put them in the chat. Oh, okay. Yeah. Hillary Hunter asked, let's do it. Let's do the exercise, the Triplicity Lord exercise. What would the third Triplicity Lord of the sixth house be in the current chart? So, and this is where, don't be afraid to use your reference books, folks. I got tabs. We got tabs. So I always have to look at this because I just haven't, it won't stick in my brain. So I'm going to look at the element first. And I guess the first question is, do we use whole sign or do we use quadrant? When I actually learned the Triplicity Lord technique, I learned it from Dr. Jen Zart. And at the time, or I think still, I mean, she uses Alcabitius, which is a quadrant-based system. So that's what I learned it in. Worked very well, demonstrated it beautifully. I since have been also using whole sign and just using that. Unless a planet is really close to like an angular cusp, I kind of stick with that in that consideration. But you can do either. You can do whole sign or quadrant for this. Maybe do both and see if there's any kind of difference in the results that you get. Sometimes there is overlap, which is interesting. So for here, whole sign, we would see Earth. We also have to look at the sect. So it is a day chart. We have the sun above the horizon. So in a day chart with Earth, oh, I wonder if I can just take you over to this article. I can. Do I have any embarrassing tabs up? No, I don't. Okay, hopefully y'all can see that now. This is the article I'm going to link, but I got this nice little table here. And so we can find our little Taurus, and it's a day chart. So then the first triplicity lord is Venus because it's Earth, then Moon, then Mars. So the third one is Mars. Actually, that would be the same answer. If it was a night chart, then it would go Moon, Venus, Mars instead of Venus, Moon. So it's Mars. So then we would look at Mars and see, we would look at Mars's condition. So I'm glad that Mars is no longer in Cancer. That's really great. I love that. I love that for Mars. But yeah, that's how you would do that. And then you can analyze the condition of that planet, the placement of it, and see what that says. Cool. Neat. Okay. Anything else? That was a good question. All right. Yeah, Dr. Jen's art is awesome. I'm trying to think. I think she has her lectures on her website. So let's move on to the dream question. What was that? That was really well put. Jennifer Clayton asked about is there a correlation between dreams and moon sign? Like if I'm dreaming something and I wake up and I look at, and I think this is what Jennifer meant, but if I'm dreaming something and I look at the chart for the time when I was dreaming, does that say something? Like, let's say the moon was in Leo and I had a dream. Is there a correlation between the type of dream I might have and the placement of the moon in Leo? And my personal answer, I believe yes. I don't know what most people believe with that, but I observe that. I should be better at watching my dreams. I'm not, but I think I wanted to call us all to do an exercise, like if you're into dream journaling, especially, then this is just one thing to layer on top of that is like, if you're already dream journaling, then when you wake up in the morning, look at the chart, see where the moon is. And especially in your chart, like if let's say, I don't know, the fourth house is Leo for you, if you're a Taurus rising or something like that, then maybe there's fourth house topics that come in. Maybe you dream about your parents. Maybe your dream is Leo in nature. Maybe you're on a stage or your parents are on a stage or something. So I think that's worth looking at. I don't think, like for me personally, it doesn't always hit. Sometimes I have dreams and I'm like, nah, that's nothing like whatever the moon is like right now, at least according to me in that moment. But no, I think that's great. Just the moon being our physical body and our experience of, sensing and thinking and perceiving, that physical experience happens when we're asleep too. So I think the moon does speak to the dream world, what happens to our bodies and our minds when we're asleep, what we're doing when we're asleep. And it's interesting too, because the third and the ninth houses in particular speak to dream divination. So that was, look at that too. So pretty much my office hours have turned into like a Demetra George infomercial hour. So sorry if you have these books. I know I'm just repeating a lot out of them and I understand that. Oh man, why can't I read more faster? Ooh, here it was. I wanted to read something out of here. Yeah, so in southern Greece, this is from Demetra George, Ancient Astrology, Volume 2, where she's talking about all the houses, and she's talking about the third house on page 668. And she's mentioning here a time long, long ago in a place in southern Greece, far, far away, where there was a cult of Selene, the moon, that had an oracular sanctuary, blah, 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 blah. Supplicants would consult the oracle in sleep, and the goddess would reveal whatever they wished to learn in dreams. The triple goddess Artemis, Selene, and Hecate were worshipped as the new, full, and dark phases of the moon. Some of these cults were connected to, I'm going to say this wrong, oneromancy, Oneiro mancy, or divination by means of dream oracles. So dream divination, basically. So this was a thing about the moon. And the moon in the third house, the moon has her joy in the third house. It's the place of the priestess, the goddess, and it does become a place of dream divination. The ninth as well, when we think about people going on pilgrimages, special journeys, maybe they're sick and they go to a temple to, like Demetra describes people going to like a temple, or even like hearing other people talk about the Asclepius temples where you were given, mugwort or some kind of herb and you go to sleep, you have a dream, and then the prescription to help remedy your ailment comes in the dream. So this axis really does deal with that. So then looking in your natal chart to see in your birth chart if there's anything interesting in there as it might relate to how you relate to dreaming, and if dreaming might be a useful thing for you in your life. It's not for everybody. It's not everybody's jam, but I think third and ninth house placements can speak to that a little bit. But yeah, then too, just following the moon around wherever the moon is and seeing if that connects with dreams that you may have had. I think that's a great exercise. It's great, just, I don't know, for self-reflection, but also as an astrological practice. I think it's really fun. So yeah, can't recommend it enough. Let's see. Oh, and Adam Summer, that was the other person with dream divination, dreams and astrology. I don't know. He hasn't talked about it that much lately, but there were a few years, like maybe, I don't know, circa like 2017, 2018, 2019. I feel like Adam Summer talked a lot about in his podcast, Holes of Heavens. He talked a lot about dreams and astrology and stuff like that. So maybe you can peruse that and see if you find anything. All right. I think I've covered pretty much all the questions except for the one about moon stuff. Let's see if anyone in the chat has any queries. Hello, Holly. Welcome. Oh, that's okay, Dux Noctis. That's a good point too. You do not have to be present to win. If anyone ever wants to ask a question, I usually put a call out onto Instagram beforehand. I don't always if I don't have my shit together. But you do not have to be here for me to answer it. I will just do my best to answer it regardless. So yeah, need not be present to win. Let's see. Hillary asks, what would be an aspect that would block dreaming? And how do you feel Saturn is performing as a dreamer in Pisces? I kind of like that question. Yeah, I like that. So let's see. I mean, I don't know. Can an aspect block a dream? I mean, I personally have the moon square Saturn. I feel like if anyone's going to block a dream, which I'm a little skeptical that it can, but probably Saturn, right? Because Saturn is reality. Saturn is like cold, hard reality. It's like the opposite of Neptune. It's what the bounds, of Jupiter, even, thinking about Jupiter as the dreamer of the zodiac, or as the sky before we had Neptune. Even Jupiter is within the bounds of Saturn. So I feel like I vote Saturn, but I feel like I made that up. I have moon square Saturn in my chart, and I personally have a hard time with dreams. I've never been much of a dreamer at night. I daydream a lot. I'm a day chart. I feel like I've heard Jason Hawley talk about that. This could be wrong. This could be a misattribution, so don't quote me on this, but like something about night charts, maybe identifying more with nighttime dreaming, and day charts identifying more with daydreaming. Just these like kind of liminal moments of visioning. But like those are not the same either. Like daydreaming and night dreaming, not the same. Brain is entirely different in an fMRI for those two things. So rationalist, materialist brain me kind of ruined that just all of a sudden. I digress. I blame Saturn. I'm not much of a dreamer, and I have a moon Saturn square, like exactly, like down to it's like by arc minutes that it's off. But also, just speaking from personal experience, but also what I've heard from a lot of other people, an aspect that would block dreaming, any aspect to weed, any aspect to any planet with marijuana, that is probably going to block your dreams. So there's certain medications that are going to interact with your sleep architecture in a way that is going to change your dreaming experience. So that's another thing that has nothing to do with astrology to consider, is just like what's on your med list, whether those are prescribed or unprescribed. I'm sure there's herbs too. Like there are herbs that help with dreaming, like mugwort, I believe is one. But I'm sure there are herbs that don't help or that hurt dreaming capacity. So Lee Cargill says let's see, Peloponnese? The Peloponnese cult did give psychedelic drinks to the participants. Oh yeah, I'm sure there was all kinds of psychedelic stuff going on. Yeah, it's probably, I mean, I imagine that's a lot of what they're talking about too. Not to say there weren't like more mellow evenings of just like good old mugwort tea, but why do I have a feeling? I mean, I certainly wouldn't make a pilgrimage if I were not getting psychedelics at the end of it. Oh, and Holly says their dreams get weirder on the full moon. I mean, yeah, I think just personally, my thing is that in general, everything is kind of more active with the full moon, mentally and energetically, physically, emotionally, all of the ways. It's just kind of more. Saturn in Pisces, I mean, Pisces is like the wide perspective of what could be possible, but still within the bounds of Saturn. So what could be possible within reason, right? I think Saturn in Pisces, Saturn is the bringing down to earth those visions, those ideas, that perspective. It's like, how do you make this real in your life? Okay, this is what you believe. How do you reflect that in your actual lived real life? And I think that's that Saturn transit, 3 years of us constructing and building in real ways, like what we hope for, what we dream of, in like a Jupiter way, within reason, within the bounds of Saturn. That's what I think about that. So Saturn themselves, I don't think they're like, I mean, they're gonna soften up in water. They're not as dry, they're not as rigid. Saturn's going to be softened by being in a benefic place. So but I don't know if I would call Saturn a dreamer in Pisces. Saturn is tasked with working toward those dreams though, like, because it's assigned its job. Saturn's going to do the things of Pisces in a Saturnian way. So it's going to take those wide perspectives and try to do something reasonable about it, which I think is fantastic. Like we definitely need these cycles of just sitting back and thinking about how things could be and letting ideas just kind of marinate, versus other seasons when it is time to take action or build or say no or make structures or boundaries around things so that dreams can grow. That's been kind of the vibe between all of my Pisces posting for the last year, is basically like the Pisces Virgo conundrum of all of the little things we need to do to get to our bigger hopes. And every time the moon is in Virgo, it's like a 2.5 day opportunity every month to check in, I think, with how those Saturn things in Pisces are going. It's not a fun thing. I don't love when the moon is in Virgo right now, because like clearly it's opposing Saturn. Don't love that. But it's a good time to check in and be like, hey, are we on track? Are we doing are we doing the things that we need to be doing to get to the good stuff? And even just like, on that note of like wanting to achieve, wanting to do, wanting to make dreams come true, and all of this very manifesty language, this very creative, generative language. There is something to be said for being present in the process of creation, in that journey. Very corny, but very true. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So noting that as well, not getting so into like, oh, Saturn is in a place, so I have to build something because Saturn is in there. It's like, no, sometimes I think it's just like, especially in Pisces, acceptance, Saturn reality, accepting the reality of a place. That's one thing they're doing in there. I think they're doing a lot more than that, but um that's I love that. That was a fun prompt. Thank you so much for that, Holly. That was great. Nanda Devi is a great dreamer, very in-depth dreams. People get annoyed listening to them recount the dreams. Of course, like the thing, it's the same thing with psychedelic trips, to us, it's just like all of these profound experiences. And like to everybody else, it just sounds like so banal. And it's like, what are you doing? But it's so special to us. That's why having a dream journal can be really helpful. Yeah, I think that's all I need to say about the dreaming thing. Let's talk in our last few minutes together. I'm probably going to go over, let's be real. If anyone in the chat has any questions, throw them in there. I will be watching. This last question comes from Roia. I hope I said your name right. Roia asks, just for a discussion on moon phases, nodes. They'd mentioned other planetary cycles. I'm not sure if they were meaning more toward like synodic cycles or things of that nature, like Saturn cycles. But I'm just for now, I'm going to pick on moon phases and nodes. And this is definitely like coming from all of my usual teachers, Brennan, Demetra, grabbing for the book again. I'm always grabbing for the book. Who else have I heard talk about the nodes? Samuel Reynolds. I love Samuel Reynolds' take on the nodes. I should link that too. The nodes lecture. It's on the NORWAC website, but I'm going to see if it's on his website. He's got a really good take. So there can be a lot of different ways of cutting up the lunar phases. One of my favorite things, I'm going to stop share for a second. I don't know if y'all can see this, but there's an 11-fold division of the lunar cycle. We can cut up into 4 things, but we can also cut it up into like, and I know this is like backwards maybe or whatever, but there's all these different phases, and I will read them to you. And this is figure 50 on page 335. Following Porphyry, Valens, Pallas, and Rhetorius, we've got the new moon, of course, the sun and moon conjunct at 0 degrees. At 1 degree, the moon was coming forth. So coming forth, 1 degree. Then rising at 15 degrees. So this is the point where that crescent will become visible at 15 degrees. Then we've got that's rising at 15 degrees. So you can see the crescent in the sky, but it is a crescent moon at 45 degrees. Or until that 45 degrees. From 45 degrees to 90, that's the crescent phase. Then from 90 degrees to 135, that is the first gibbous, the waxing gibbous. They have a little, is that one of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, that's a 12th line. I'm not going to read that. Then we got a full moon. Then we got a waning gibbous, disseminating moon. That is going to be 225 degrees around. Then we get the second quarter moon, that second half, then the final crescent, and then it's balsamic, and then setting at 15 degrees, which I think a lot of us call balsamic. Balsamic is 45 degrees to new. So 315 degrees around the circle. And then at 345 degrees, then we're setting. Then we get the new moon again. So there were other ways, more simple ways, just new moon, first quarter, full moon, last quarter. And then we got, I think this is the one most people are familiar with, new moon, crescent moon, first quarter, gibbous moon, full moon, disseminating moon, last quarter, balsamic moon. They're all great. I always like 2 metaphors I use. The first metaphor is of a breath. And this is where we can think of inhaling as a waxing moon at the top of our breath. We're like ready to exhale. That's the full moon. and then exhaling is the waning moon. And then right at the end, like, and I actually learned this. This is so cringe. Don't hate me, but I learned this from a Sam Harris book, like, I don't know, 14 years ago. I was reading Sam Harris during my atheist dogmatic phase. And I was reading one of his books about meditation. And this is how he described it, which I loved, because he said his favorite part of watching the breath was the part at the bottom where you've exhaled all you're going to exhale, and it's before you're inhaling. And it's so peaceful and quiet. And there's just nothing happening. And that's like a new moon. So I like that. My personal analogy or metaphor that I really like is baking a loaf of bread. That's what I always use. And I talk about the new moon being like this moment of like, I'm going to bake something. And then you decide what you're going to bake. And by the time you get to that first quarter moon, that first half of moon in the sky, it's kind of tense. It's a square between the sun and the moon. It's like this deciding moment of like, okay, this is the type of bread I'm going to make. And I've never done this before, but we're gathering the ingredients and we're doing it. And then from that quarter through the gibbous to the full, you are making that bread. By the time you get to the full moon, you are presenting the bread, sharing the bread, or I should say presenting, showing the bread. Then the moon starts to wane. It's disseminating. I am disseminating the bread. I'm sharing the bread with my people, and they're going to be like, whoa, this is amazing. Can you teach me? And then by like the third quarter moon, you're like teaching other people how to make bread. You're like, and here's the meaning that you can get from life out of making bread. And then it's going to wane, and you're going to have to figure out in that last quarter, through that last waning crescent, how to wrap up. I got to clean up the kitchen. I got to, pack away the remaining bread so it doesn't get stale. I have to set up for the next baking adventure, basically. So that whole like process is how I like to look. That's how I watch the lunar cycle. That's how it shows up in my own life. And a lot of times what I notice too is that like we expect external things to happen. For me, most of my lunar stuff happens internally. Like I'm having realizations that at the full moon, I'm like, this is how I want to deal with this thing. And it's something that I've been trying to wrap my head around for the 2 weeks prior that started at the new moon. So a lot of times it is just kind of internal for me. But like, the last lunar cycle, it was about something someone told me, and they told me at the full moon. So I was like, oh, okay. Actually, they told me a couple days leading up to the full moon. And then the full moon was the ramifications of the news that I had gotten. So, that was very external. So just to give people an idea, like the action really happens during the full moon. Like that's what I observe. Yeah. So hopefully that answers the question on lunar phases. It is a cycle, and there have been endless ways of talking about that cycle, chopping it up into different pieces. Different people have different ways of thinking about it, and they're all great. And, some of them are going to resonate more or less with us. And feel free to use these analogies with others if you need to. I've found them very helpful. And now I also would like bread. So let's see. Last topic. Oh, hold on. There's a question. Baby Buddha Luna. Is that really your name? That's adorable. Baby Buddha Luna. What did you call Pisces moon again? I can't remember. Full of soup? I called it full of soup. Yeah, marshmallow moon works too. I really like marshmallow moon, bowl of soup. I'm constantly drinking my holy trinity of like some well, this isn't caffeinated, this is decaf, but water, usually juice, some kind of juice. Pisces moon loves juice. Oh my God. Okay. Oh, hi, Max Gascon, Astrologo. Hello. Yes, it's good to see you. He's a fantastic astrologer. If anyone wants to follow him on YouTube, he has a YouTube channel. Oh, if you're getting help from this, hit the like button. Smash the like button for me. Thank you. I don't mean to keep picking mutable ascendants for this. I wonder if that's why I'm so scattered. Probably not. Because I just always do these at 7 p.m. So I'm kind of stuck with whatever time. I do elect my monthly forecasts. Those I elect on purpose, but these, it's kind of whatever I get. Keeps me humble. Uh, yeah, I think there was a retrograde going on the last one. Um, and my last live, my mic wasn't plugged in. Like that was another technological thing. I totally screwed up my last live. It was a mess. Okay. Last thing, the nodes. So, um, let's do the astronomy first. So these are the lunar nodes, these little loopy-doo guys. And I learned this from Adam Sommer. He talks about the south node. He talked about it like it being a cup that whole, and this is more of a modern evolutionary, I think this is more evolutionary astrology, but like a cup that holds all of our old stories or all of our stories. And I really like that because it helped me remember that the South Node is about kind of the past from a modern point of view, or where we're coming from, or kind of where we're starting, because there's already stories there, versus like the North Node, that cup is tipped over. And I don't remember. I think this is probably from Adam Summers, probably the same lesson. But when we think about the Vedic Jyotish framing, that more has to do with the story of the disembodied head of a dragon that was insatiable. It was like a bottomless pit of a stomach that this dragon didn't have. It was like just insatiable appetite, an empty cup. It's like it can never feel full. And that is part of that distorted, frenzied, always hungry nature of the North Node. So I use those kind of devices as a way to remember which is which personally. These are places astronomically where the path of the sun and the moon meet and where eclipses happen. So we can think, shoot, it's the first time I don't have ponytail holders anywhere. I always have. I was going to use some to teach, but I don't have them. So I gotta use my hands. So pretend like this circle is the path of the sun and this circle is the path of the moon. They're not exactly flat. They're not exactly parallel. They're kind of like crossed a bit. It's like two hula hoops that are stuck in each other and they're off slightly by about like 5 degrees. It's like a very tiny amount. And I am going to use this picture here because this is such a helpful, sorry, I'm bootlegging Dimitri George today a lot. Let's stop share again. So here's a diagram of what I just said, basically. So you can see that when the lines are crossing, that's where the paths of the sun and the moon are crossing. And we can see that those are the nodes. Where those two paths are the furthest apart, the path of the sun and the moon are the furthest apart at the bendings, which are square to the nodes. So it's kind of interesting because we think about the sun and the moon as kind of like our physical body and our intangible spirit or self. And when they're together, there's kind of a joining of those two things. When they're apart at the bendings, that signifier for what is the physical form or the emotions or the body is very separate from the mind or the intellect or the soul. And so Demetra explains in the book that there was this idea that people could be potentially very rational. I should just read what she said. I'm just going to read what she said because it's so good and I don't want to mess it up. Okay, here it is. The moon at the bendings, because this is a moon and a sun-based thing. It is worth noting that other planets have their own bendings, and Dimitri talks about that in this book as well. And that if we're going to talk, or different planets have their own nodes. So like Saturn has its nodes, the moon has lunar nodes, Saturn has Saturnian nodes. Actually, Mark Jones talks about other planets' nodes quite a bit. He has material on the other planets' nodes. But when we talk about the moon at the bendings, that's really important for the moon because that's like the moon's kind of relationship with the sun versus like, looking at other planets at the bendings, which like is used in a lot of different practices of astrology. That doesn't necessarily make as much sense to me. But I digress. So she says the moon at the bendings suggests both a state of objective awareness between the lunar body and the solar soul, but can also indicate the potential for dissociation and lack of connection. Planets that are square the nodes at the bendings are important features in the doctrines of modern evolutionary astrology, where they represent parts of the personality that are not fully integrated into the psyche. So that also, it's kind of interesting there too, that the modern evolutionary approach also speaks, just the same as ancient, to a potential separation of parts of the being, of the self. So that's very interesting. So then how do we interpret other planets at the bendings, or other planets? Other planets at the bendings. That is kind of where there is a question mark. And it depends on what tradition you're going by, basically. So yeah, those are the nodes. There's a few different kinds as well, or I shouldn't say kinds. There's a few different calculations. I will share this as well. I don't know if anyone can see this. Lunar node, true. There's a true one and there's a mean one. Not mean as in like not nice, but like the average of a bunch of calculations. Because the way the moon moves, like, I guess it's not like, some of the data is like predictive, based on predictive models of where the moon's going to be. Another one of these, I don't remember which is based on another type of data. As you can see by my face, I don't know what I'm talking about. I use the true one because that's what Stephen Forrest told me to do. So yeah, I'm not being a very good example here of knowing what you're talking about. But yeah, just know for your own purposes, this is where I'll let y'all do the work, and know that there are two different kinds. And you can Google it. I've Googled it like 5 or 6 times now, and I just can't commit to memory what the hell the difference is. But it only really matters when like the nodes are on a cusp of a house or something. It's only a difference by like a degree or 2. It's very rarely an issue, but it is something that I will look at. If I have a client and their node is like right on the edge, I will look at both calculations to see if it even makes a difference. So that's a little nutsy boltsy thing about the nodes. They spend about 18 months in a sign. So they're about to change in July. They've been in Scorpio and Taurus. They're about to be, because they move backwards around. So they're about to go into Libra and Aries. And every 6 months, the sun and the moon meet at these points and have an eclipse. So I think that's all I know about the nodes. I think that's about it. Hopefully that helps. All right, let's see if anyone has any final thoughts, concerns. Lee recommends looking up The Monad of John Dee. I don't know what it is, but I'll write it down. I haven't even seen that word ever. All right. I think we're all good. Thanks, everybody. That was a good one. Oh, we're in inception mode. Here we go. Great hour. Wow. We got through everything miraculously somehow. Blah, 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 blah. Thank you to everyone for participating, for joining us. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your questions and comments. If this has been helpful, hit the like button, hit the subscribe if you really like it. And I will see you again at least in a month. So this is always the second Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time of every month, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I might start doing these. We'll see. I don't think next month, like if I kind of want to do 2 a month. But I'm moving in July. Hopefully my family doesn't listen to this because I haven't told them yet. Y'all are knowing things that I don't tell my family. 12th house stuff. But I'm moving, so things are going to be kind of crazy, but it would be nice if I could get into a routine and do these a little bit more often, like maybe this fall. Let's shoot for this fall. Oh, one other side note. Is anyone still here? Has anyone heard? Now I'm just talking to y'all like you're my friends. This is fun. Has anyone heard if 36 Faces is coming out? I haven't heard anything. I'm on the newsletter. I haven't gotten a newsletter, but I heard that 36 Faces was maybe coming this summer, and I want it really badly. So if anyone has any intel, put it in the comments for the rest of us, because I think we're all kind of waiting. We love you. We love you very much, Austin. We support you, but we love your book too much, clearly. Thank you, RC. I appreciate it. I'm going to wait 10 more seconds to see if anyone answers my question because there's a delay. Is there any good benefic enclosures coming up? We got to be between, no, we have to be between like very few degrees. All right, looks like maybe, oh, does Saturn get in the way? Saturn totally gets in the way. No benefic enclosure for us. August, maybe. Holly says maybe August. So I will keep my ears pointed around. After Venus retrograde. See, this is why I asked. Thank you, Adam Davis. I appreciate you. Oh my gosh, thank you, RC. Thank you for that super sticker. Oh yeah, I should do a big gratitude because I finally monetized. I was finally able to do that. So thank you everyone for all of your support. I would not be able to do this without you. Yeah, just like have no words. Like when I think about how grateful I am for everyone's support over the last 3 years, my brain just goes blank and I can't think of words because there's just so many. So yeah, looks like, okay, after 36 faces, after August or after Venus retrograde, because Venus retrograde is August. Okay, well, let's cross our fingers. Anyway, I'm being greedy. All right, everybody. I love you so much. Have a great month. I will see you at the end of this month for my forecast for July, which hopefully wasn't as busy as June. All right. Burp.